welcome to Canada.
Thank you very much.
Welcome back to Canada. You performed in Toronto last night.
I did. In fact, I did 2 shows at the Comedy Bar last night, which was brilliant fun.
How was it?
It was, what I loved about it was that it was a kind of a mix of people because the shows were for JFL 42 pass holders and they got to come and see these shows for free. So I had this weird mix of some people who come along specifically to see me and then a bunch of people who are just like, this is free. Let's see what this is like. And in some ways, that's the most delightful of all mixes of an audience.
Yeah.
Because you've got enough people who are new to it and can be surprised by everything and everywhere that you're going and hopefully be delighted by it. But you've also got enough people there that those people don't start to doubt their decisions. You know, you could tell a few people when they walked in, they were like, look, I've decided not to go to a free event for the Pan Am Games tonight, so you better be funny, Aussie guy, telling you jokes.
I've heard you talk about your accent and your nationality getting certain responses, let's say in New Zealand.
Sure.
Or the UK. Do you get a better initial response in Canada?
Oh, yeah, I think that, I think that Canada and Australia, we kind of understand that we're the same person. We just went and lived in different places.
You lived in the better place, I think.
Yeah, we lived in the better place, but you guys got better politics. Do you know what I mean? Like, you guys were like, we'll get marriage equality and stuff like that. And then we were like, we're too busy tanning to make progress.
I'm really curious about the evolution of your political thinking. You just described your upbringing, quite unique, given your political views. You know, people might expect that you grew up in a cosmopolitan kind of big city type environment. What was your kind of evolution, your journey in terms of your political understanding?
Certainly, some of it was definitely through comedy. When I was about 13 or 14 years old, we had 2 television networks, down on the farm, 2 television networks. One of them was the government broadcaster, the ABC, which is the one that I work for now. And there was a guy called Andrew Denton, who, if people love John Oliver or they love Jon Stewart, this guy was doing that stuff 30 years ago in Australia, like a brilliant mind. And he used to have this TV show called The Money or the Gun. And every week they would take a topic and they would explore it comedically, but also kind of journalistically over that hour. And he did one that won a bunch of international awards called The Year of the Patronising Bastard. And it was about the way that people treat people with disabilities. And he did interviews with people with disabilities, but it was funny. He was being funny and he was making those jokes that, with those people in that. And I was like, oh my God, people think like this? It was the first time that I was like, that's what went off in my mind.
Wow.
I was like, I think like that. That's what I think about disability. Oh, that's what I think about gay people. And people think about this, and not only do they think about it in this way, but they can be funny about it. And they have managed to make funny all the things that I know instinctively in my head. And now I have a weapon I can use when my friends are like, well, this about gay people or this about disabled people. I can go, well, no, what about this? And so that was it for me. There was that TV show. And Andrew Denton, who was the guy who hosted that show, is the guy who was the initial producer of the television show I do back home now. So if I'd known when I was 13, 14 years old that this guy who opened my mind to what I was going to do would then be a guy I worked with like 20 years later, it probably would have blown my mind.
Speaking of shaping thinking, right? I mean, you just talked earlier about you don't know if political comedy can change minds, but certainly give shape to thoughts and confirm sort of people's common sense. That's a really amazing story. Now, I read that The Glass House, one of your satirical TV shows, was canceled because of government pressure.
Well, look.
Or at least people had that impression.
Yeah, but certainly people had that impression. We did this show for 6 years, and it was a weekly satirical news show. And we were kids, I think we started doing it when I was 25. I started hosting that show, and the other guys who were on were also kind of the same age and same experience in comedy. So we were brats, and we would go after the government like mercilessly. And then the show got cancelled, and because it had its highest ever ratings, it was going really well, and then it just got cancelled out of the blue. And it was on the government network. And there was like press that, and there was we never thought that was the case, but everybody seemed to think it was the case, to the point where the Prime Minister of the country, John Howard at the time, had to put out a press release to deny that he had cancelled my show. And it's a weird moment in your life when you lose your job and the Prime Minister of the country feels the need to speak out on the issues. When I lost my job delivering pamphlets when I was 16, the Prime Minister was suspiciously quiet on the topic.
You've made a great quote about political comedy. You've said, if you're a comedian that has political goals, you don't understand what comedy is.
Right.
What do you mean by that?
Well, I mean, I think that if you have political goals, then you actually can't do what comedy is meant to do. I always think that here's the way I would put it: you can have a joke that doesn't have a point, but you can't have a point that doesn't have a joke. That's as simple as I would put it. If you're a politician, you can have a point that doesn't have a joke.
Yeah.
But first and foremost, if you consider yourself to be a comedian, a stand-up comedian, every single thing has to come with a joke. That's the one requirement.
That's your job.
That's your job.
Yeah.
That's what it says on the post throughout the front. That's what people have paid their money for. Now, if you can put a joke on your point, audiences will let you talk about anything that you want to talk about. And that's the trick. People start coming into comedy and they think there are these topics that I should talk about to be funny. Bill Hicks talked about smoking pot, so I'll talk about that. Or George Carlin was angry about this thing, so I'll be angry about that thing.
Yeah.
But what you've actually got to realize is you've got to get to that point where you can go, okay, I know how to be funny and here's what I want to say. So then I start with that. What is it that I want to say?
Yeah.
Now, I'm not allowed to say any of these things that I want to say unless there is a joke on every single one of these things. And I think that's the difference between, being a comedian and being someone who genuinely wants to, kind of make a political change.
Yeah, I think that's a great general rule for comics to have. One thing I came across also in doing some background is that you're a vegan. Is that correct? Sort of.
I'm definitely full vegetarian.
Okay. Oh, okay.
And I would like to say that I would try probably 9 months of the year to live vegan. I live vegan when it's easy to live vegan. Like I'm based in LA half of the year. Easiest place. Eat vegan there. Keep myself in the vegan lifestyle. But it turns out sometimes when you're staying in a shopping mall in Dallas, Texas, your vegan options are not as plentiful as they are in other places.
It's amazing, right? I did some traveling once in the States, stopped in at a Dunkin' Donuts or something for breakfast. And I said, okay, let me get like a English muffin with egg, whatever. Just put some lettuce, some tomato on it. They said, we don't have lettuce or tomato. I said, okay, it's fine. Cucumber, onion. We don't have vegetables. It's an amazing thing to say as a restaurant, we don't have vegetables.
Don't have them. Don't have them. We do not have vegetables. I remember I was, where was it? I was in Alaska doing some shows and it was like Sunday morning, like 2 shows on a Saturday night. So you're a little, hungover on the Sunday morning. So I go for breakfast. And this is what I really wanted for breakfast. I wanted a couple of pieces of toast and some avocado. And so I ordered the toast and the toast came with, it just said toast on the thing, but it came with a stack of pancakes, toasts. Toast came with a side of pancakes and a hash brown. The toast. If you order toast, it comes with a hash brown and a stack of pancakes. Just with it. Standard. That's what you get with toast.
That's not a topping for toast.
Why don't you just put a pillow over my face and kill me? Seriously. Maybe the oceans aren't rising. Maybe America is sinking.
The reason why I bring this up is because earlier today I talked to Mark Bittman, who's a New York Times columnist. He's a writer, huge advocate for fixing the food system. And I just wondered if you had thoughts about that, if maybe that inspired your vegetarianism.
Yeah, it did to me. It's interesting. When you grow up on a farm, I think you go one of 2 ways. So my father is one of those people who definitely has a connection to animals and where they come from, but he eats meat 3 times a day. Because he has that connection.
Exactly.
He understands exactly where it comes from and he's comfortable with that. I went the other way. I also saw where it came from and what it is, and I decided that if I didn't need to, here's the thing I always try to say to people, it's take no more than you need. If you feel like you need to eat meat, once a month if you're a woman because for, reasons of your body feeling comfortable, you feel like that actually helps you or whatever, then just do that. It's okay to sometimes just take as much as you need. The problem in our society is we consume so much more than we need and we waste so much food. We make enough food in the world right now to feed everyone. This is the fact that people won't say out loud, but it's true. We already produce enough food in the world to feed everybody in the world. It's the uneven and unequal distribution of wealth and income and that food that is the actual problem in the food supply. The other thing is that things are priced completely inappropriately. You don't get animals treated humanely if you need to get a bucket of chicken for $7. There's just no way you can do that. You can't give the animal a good life and also still have that. So I think we have to have a more appropriately price structured thing so that we're like, well, I grew up on a farm where the animals were raised as humanely as possible as I can imagine. There was great care and love for those animals. They were never treated in any way where you wouldn't think there was. But also, once every 6 months, a mobile butcher van would come around to our farm, and they would get like an animal that had been raised for this purpose. And in the back of this van, like an ice cream van, but of death, they would put the cow in there, and then on the farm, they would butcher this entire cow. Now, again, you're using the entire cow. Maybe that's something you should really celebrate. We would have this deep, freezer, like one of those big, deep freezers that you open up at the top, and they would make this entire cow into sausages and chops and steaks and, kidneys and liver and anything that you could make out of a cow, went in there and was used, over the next 6 months. But to me, I mean, I couldn't ever eat meat after. It was like I was living with Dexter. Do you know what I mean? Like, why are they cutting this up and storing all the body parts in the? To me, that was horrible. I was like, I just can't.
And it sounds like this is something you take on in your comedy as well.
Yeah, it's certainly something I've talked about over the years. And I also like to always talk about my contradictions and flaws, because we'll all make our own excuses. Like the way that I justify eating cheese and butter sometimes is like, okay, all right, like I won't kill anything so I can eat it, but if I can squeeze it and delicious comes out, okay, I mean, come on, we're just giving it a squeeze and something really delicious came out. If cheese came out of me when you squeezed me, occasionally I would let you squeeze me for some cheese. Like, you know what I mean? Like, come on. I'm not going to kill you. I'm just squeezing you for some butter. Come on.
That sounds like a fair rule as well. Thanks so much for coming in.